In 2009, Zac Efron played a young Matthew Perry. Is that a good idea? Let's find out. Hello everyone, I'm K Swope. 17 Again is a comedy film that seems to have been forgotten over the past couple of years. But does this movie deserve better? And is it any good? Stay tuned to the end of this video to find out. So ladies and gentlemen, in my reviews, here's what we're going to do. We're going to go over the good things of the movie, and then the bad things of the movie, and then at the end we'll have our conclusion, and I will rate it on a scale from 1 to 10. 1 being the worst thing I've ever laid my eyes on, and 10 being absolutely amazing, the coolest thing I've ever seen. So, that being said, let's dive right in with the good stuff. Now, first thing I noticed about this movie, I think this is funny. This is not objectively good, but I enjoyed it, and it is a comedy movie, and if I found it funny, that's all that matters. And what that is that Zac Efron playing a kid that plays basketball again, sort of being, in my head, typecast with, the whole Troy Bolton thing, High School Musical, which I think is kind of funny. But besides that, I will say, the biggest standout thing for this movie, if you ask me, is Zac Efron's acting. I honestly was really surprised by how good he was. Because whenever I think of Zac Efron, or here he's in a movie, or he's got this movie coming out, that movie coming out, I'm just kind of like, yeah, whatever. I mean, Zac Efron's fine, but I don't really love him, if that makes sense. But in this movie, I don't know, something about his performance I just really, really liked. I can't quite put my finger on what it was. I think it's the fact that he played a teenager with all of the foresight that a mid 40-year-old guy or whatever, I forget how old he was in the movie, but would have, which was quite interesting. And he was very believable in the role too, I guess, which I guess is just good acting. But again, it's kind of hard to put into words because I really appreciated what he did with the material. And it kind of surprised me that he did this good because in my mind, when I think of Zac Efron, I don't think of him so much as some type of amazing actor as much as I do a teenage girl from the late 2000s heartthrob kind of guy. So seeing him act as good as he did really surprised me, but it was a pleasant surprise, and so I didn't mind it at all. Something else that's worth mentioning too in this movie, we gotta bring back that cool Zac Efron look, because there's a scene in the movie where he gets his 17-year-old self makeover, if you will. Not really a makeover, but he goes out, buys some new clothes, gets a haircut, just to kind of fit in and be more of the times. And then he comes out of it, and I'm like, that has got style. I'll show a picture to you guys of what I'm talking about. But he's got the jacket, the clean white t-shirt. The skinny jeans I can give or take. But the aviator sunglasses, I'm like, whatever happened to guys dressing like that, okay? That was, I don't want to say classy per se, but I guess compared to how a lot of people act and dress nowadays, it is quite classy. But it's just a really slick look. So I don't know. I just kind of like it. It's either I just like it a lot or Zac Efron just pulls it off really good. I don't know. But either way, I saw it in the scene and I'm like, I love that so much. I know it sounds kind of feminine of me to be talking about how great someone's fashion sense and clothes are, but I don't know. I don't know what's getting into me. Maybe I'm becoming a hardcore Zac Efron High School Musical fan. But maybe I should just stick to the status quo, if you know what I'm saying. Something else I didn't expect to see in this movie was Chad Dillon Cooper, which is Sterling Knight. That's the character that he played in the Disney Channel show Sunny with a Chance, which I watched a good bit growing up. But I was watching the movie, didn't know he was even in the thing. Then he shows up and he's Matthew Perry / Zac Efron's son, which is it's funny too because we're talking about good acting, and his character in this movie is the exact opposite of Chad Dillon Cooper in Sunny with a Chance. So that gets to show off some range, which I think was also pretty good. So Sterling, good job on that movie. I think he did great. Generally, I think the acting in this movie is pretty good as well. I have no complaints. And I think the acting is really good, especially because the movie is really funny and has a lot of jokes. But I don't think these are the kind of jokes I would normally laugh at, because I have a very dark / broken sense of humor. And I was laughing at a lot of things I typically don't laugh at, and I think it's because the acting was done so well and so believably. And I also think the scenarios that they were set up in too. Because if you're watching movies like this, it's important to put yourself, of course, in the minds of some of the characters because you're supposed to relate with them. And I think that also really helped carry the humor a lot. So a mix of things is why I think the humor worked in this, for me at least. But either way, I think it worked out good, and I appreciate it. And a random detail I noticed about this movie that I quite liked was the color grading. It wasn't like super oversaturated, but it was very bright, and the colors seemed quite vibrant. And I don't know what it was, what they did for that, but it was very, very nice. Now, if you reflect back onto my Beetlejuice review, I pointed out with some things Tim Burton did with his makeup style choices that he had for certain characters who were like dead and stuff. And in a very similar vein, I really like when we get to see more vibrant colors, because I feel like today's world's just getting more gray and boring. Like if you look at cars nowadays, new cars coming out, they're not making them in fun colors. They're making them in whites, blacks, variations of grays, some really ugly like greens and blues. And it's like, I don't like this. It's kind of gross, kind of dull. It's like, whatever happened to style and, using colors intentionally, making things pop, things, I don't know. But this movie really felt really good with how they used color, and it was nice to see that, because I feel like the world we live in is just so gray and dull nowadays. So I wish generally society we can go back to having fun colors, places, enjoying bright things other than on YouTube thumbnails when people are trying to pine for your attention. I think it's also a really important note in this movie. I'm going to throw some shade here. This movie actually has a lightsaber fight, which, first of all, was just a really funny setup. But second of all, this lightsaber fight was honestly better than just about every lightsaber fight that happens in the Star Wars sequels. Because the Star Wars sequels were pretty much awful for the most part. So I'm not special in saying that. I understand that. But I think it's so funny that some random comedy from 2009 was able to pull off lightsaber fighting better than the Star Wars sequel movies, which is just hilarious to me. Kind of shifting tones, though, I do want to say. I really, really like the messaging of this movie and what the movie really has to say and the progress that the main characters go through. Matthew Perry / Zac Efron, because as you've heard me say before, Zac Efron plays a young Matthew Perry, which I'll have more on that in a little bit. I really think it's good. He goes through a lot of really good, dare I say, wholesome lessons, because what's happening in the plot, and if I didn't say this already, spoilers ahead, he's so stuck in the past with high school that he wants to go back and kind of relive his glory days, for one. So when he turns 17 again, he realizes, wait a minute, I think maybe my age was changed, not so that I could relive my glory days, but that I could help my kids, which is a really good thing, because that's something I really, really hate seeing in like everything that I'm seeing a lot nowadays. Parents despising their kids almost. They're saying, oh, my kids are just a burden and this and that and this and that. And this movie, I think, was really, really good in messaging, because that's kind of the character arc that we see through Mike's the character's name, that we see Mike go through. He's basically kind of stubborn. He's in a funk. He's taking his wife and children for granted. And by going through this experience of being 17 again, he is realizing, wow, I've actually been a really bad father and husband. And he's basically going and fixing that. And that's kind of his goal of the whole movie. And I think that is a really, really good lesson and something that is worth taking note of. There's just so many selfish people out there today, so many people who have families and kids and take them for granted. And the fact that that's kind of the plot of the movie, and that's what's happening, and that's what the arc we see the main character go through. And by the end of the movie, when he turns back to his normal current age, he reconciles everything with his wife. He helps his kids out, even though they don't know that he helped them out. He helps them out a lot with school and socially, things like that. And he really comes to terms with the fact that he has been neglecting his responsibilities as a husband and a father. And I don't know, I think it's really good. It's really heartwarming. And I just think we need more movies with that kind of messaging out there, because it's really important, because the family structure is, dare I say, the most important thing in our society here in America. And by that breaking down, that is causing so many issues that we have in society right now. And so we need more films out there with this kind of message that are propagating that kind of lifestyle and that kind of attitude, because I think that is just so important. And I feel like I'm kind of rambling about this, but it's a topic of the movie, of messaging, that I'm very passionate about and that I really, really liked seeing, and that, for me at least, really knocks it up a lot of points in my head for this movie. But now we're going to switch tones a lot in this review here. I'm actually going to use this point specifically to transition from the good things to the bad things. So I have a good thing and then a bad thing to say about this next thing, and then we're going to go straight into the bad things. But the B plot. The B plot is we have Mike's high school best friend who he moves back in with after he's having marital issues. When he turns 17 again, he gets his high school friend to pretend to be his father. And so he basically has to get him to enroll him in school. And when he goes there, he falls in love with the principal. And so there's this plot going on with it. And it's really funny because it's like awkward and weird. So there's a lot of humor to be had in that B plot. It doesn't really affect the main plot at all, really. So technically that's objectively not good for a movie. It's still really funny though. However, now we're going to switch into the negative things. It gets really cringy at some points. Like, really cringy. And so, yeah, I don't know how else to describe it other than just, it's funny, it's cringy, but it's almost like secondhand embarrassment, except it's not secondhand embarrassment. They're not being embarrassed. It's just cringy. I don't know how else to describe it. Again, just cringe. A really big point, though, I would like to say against this movie is that Matthew Perry looks absolutely nothing like Zac Efron. So I don't believe at all that Matthew Perry looked like Zac Efron when he was 17, because they don't look anything alike. And now that Zac Efron today is a lot older, and we look at him today compared to maybe how old Matthew Perry would have been when he was that age, they still look absolutely nothing alike. And so I know in Hollywood sometimes it's hard to do that in casts and things like that. That makes these stories especially hard to tell because of things like that. And so, I don't know. I don't know if there's a way they could have improved that or not, cast someone different. But also, again, Zac Efron did so good in the movie that I kind of don't want to see anyone else than Zac Efron. And I don't know. I kind of don't want them to recast Matthew Perry in the movie either. Because, I mean, Matthew Perry, he was a fantastic actor. Rest in peace, by the way, Matthew Perry. But, I don't know. It's weird. The only way I can see that they could have fixed that issue would be to recast one of them, which I kind of don't want. So I'm kind of really mixed on that opinion there. One thing I will say, I don't like when movies are too dated. And this movie is chopped full of things and references from 2009, like Zac Efron's, I think it's like his iPhone Generation 2 that he has, and you see kids on there taking videos and stuff on their flip phones, and their like MP3 player, iPod stuff, which, don't get me wrong, I get really nostalgic about that, so personally I enjoyed seeing it, but I ultimately think it's a net negative toward the movie, which is very unfortunate, because if I go back in 20 years and I watch this movie with my kids or something, they're going to have a lot of questions about the technology used, which I know because I've had those same kind of questions I've asked my parents growing up watching things that are older, not understanding certain technology at the time. So for me, I think a movie can stand on its own better if it separates itself a little from that time in terms of having direct technological references, if that makes any sense. Something else I don't quite get is the way the whole system works where he becomes 17. I keep saying 17 again because that's the title of the movie, but also he becomes 17 again when he's 17. I don't know, it's just really easy to say. But when he becomes 17 for the second time, how about that? He becomes 17 for the second time with the whole whirlpool thing and his spirit guide, whatever they're calling it. Like, they kind of explain why it happens and how it happens, but it doesn't feel fulfilling. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Like, why is this random Santa Claus looking janitor guy the gatekeeper, if you will, who changes Zac Efron's age back to 17? It just, I don't know. I'm not quite following it. Like, I understand they establish how it happens, but I don't get the why. It'd be different, I think, if there was some type of relationship that Mike, the character, had with this janitor dude. But it's just kind of like he just shows up, and then he shows up randomly again, causing Zac Efron to fall into the whirlpool. Sorry, Matthew Perry to fall into the whirlpool, and then come back as Zac Efron. So yeah, and then he shows up at the end again for the final transformation. I get that the movie's not really they're not really concerned about telling that story. But on the other hand, if you're going to have it, it kind of needs to be referenced and brought up a little bit. Like, I'll give this example, the Freaky Friday reboot. The Lindsay Lohan, Jamie Lee Curtis Freaky Friday. I haven't seen it in a really long time, But the thing they have with the fortune cookies, making them switch their bodies, it's like, that's a little different, I think, because it's kind of a gag, and they're not really intentional about it. It's just something that just happens to them, and there's no type of shroud of mystery behind it, I guess. So I think in that situation, although they're kind of similar, I think the Freaky Friday works a little better doing a similar plot point because they acknowledge that it's kind of like just random, I guess this is going to sound really weird, but like Chinese magic or whatever, I don't know. They're not supposed to understand it, and so they don't. Whereas in this movie, they don't really care to explain or understand it. Because I was kind of interested, seeing like, okay, why is this janitor guy here? Why is this body swap thing happening? And again, it's just like he's there, it happens, they forget about him until the end of the movie. They address him like once right after they're going through the whole shock of him turning 17 again. But yeah, I think it could have been executed better. I also think in this movie, his wife, okay, Scarlett's the character's name, she should have been way more creeped out by the way that young Mike was acting. I mean, he just seems so kind of like awkward and flirty and like getting too close. And I know, like, I don't know. If I were to do that to someone's mom when I was that age, first of all, I would feel very uncomfortable. So I wouldn't do it to begin with. But also, like, I'm sure they would probably also be very uncomfortable. And so it's not that she doesn't get uncomfortable throughout the movie. It's just that I think she puts up with a lot more than I think a reasonable person in her situation would. And it just feels kind of awkward and weird. They do in the movie, you know, she's basically the only person other than, is it Ned, his friend, his geeky friend? I don't remember. But I think it's Ned. Yeah, it is Ned. Other than Ned, she's the only person that knows about the whole situation happening. But of course, she doesn't know until the end of the movie. And I don't know. It feels really weird at a lot of moments. And I'm just thinking to myself, this is really creepy. They do address it, but I don't think they address it enough, if that makes any sense. And now this is a nitpick I want to bring up too. But there's one scene. Before I talk about it, I am a very big collector of physical media. So I love video games, movies especially, and like music and like CDs. And so I have a big CD collection. So in one scene, when I see they have all of their CDs just sitting on a table without any cases in a stack that they're just flipping through, it hurts so bad to look at that because that's not how you treat a CD. That's just, they're going to get scratched, they're going to get damaged. And so for me, that just, it hurts. It hurts to look at. Just like a 10-second scene, probably less than that, where I see how they treat their CDs, and I'm just, oh man, it was painful, not gonna lie. But on a more important note, my last issue of this movie is the ending sequence feels really rushed, and I would have liked them to spend a little more time on the resolution and kind of seeing what happens to his family after everything. So what basically happens is they're at the basketball game, and they kind of repeat what happens at the beginning of the movie, sort of, but it feels like there wasn't any build-up to it. Like, there was a little bit of build-up, but I just feel like it all happened so fast. And then the spirit guide dude, the janitor Santa Claus looking guy, shows back up, just kind of out of nowhere. And Zac Efron then runs through a portal and becomes Matthew Perry again to talk to his wife. And they have a whole scene where they make up and they finally, we're going to get back together. We're going to throw our divorce proceedings out the window. We're just going to carry on, yada, yada, yada. Which, that's fine. The problem is, I feel like I wanted to see more. Like, we hear a little bit about what happens with his two kids, his daughter and his son, in high school. But I'd like to see if they had like a scene where you saw him with his family, his kids, where they're kind of doing something that feels more fulfilling, like seeing him actually be in his kids' lives in a more meaningful way, and seeing him and his wife going through life again together after sort of recommitting to each other after the events of the movie. I would have liked to see more of that. The only thing we get to see is, it's not really a credit scene. We get a the end card, and then another scene pops up, and the only real thing of substance that happens in it is we find out that Mike is taking over as the new coach for the high school, which means he will be in his kids' lives a little more. But I still wish we would have been able to see a little more about how adult Mike interacts with his kids after all of this and how things have really changed for him, because we don't get to see that. And so The resolution does not feel that satisfying to me personally. But in the end, 17 again, I think is a criminally underrated movie. It's not a perfect movie by any means, but it still has plenty to enjoy. Personally, I loved this movie. Therefore, if you're asking me the question, is this movie any good? I would say, heck yes it is. So, go check it out. 17, again, came out in 2009. Great movie. Highly recommend. I'm giving it an 8 out of 10. So, ladies and gentlemen, that is going to wrap up my review. Thank you guys all for tuning in. I'm K-Swope. If you like this video, feel free to please subscribe. That'd be greatly appreciated. Or comment if you have any different opinions or views on this movie. Have you seen the movie? Have you not seen the movie? Do you want to see this movie? That's the real question. So, anything like that, feel free to drop a comment and I'll reply to as many comments as humanly possible, which at this point in the size of my channel is just about all of them. So, leave a comment and we'll discuss more about this movie down there. But hope you guys all enjoy. I will see all of you guys in the next video.